All right, guys, so this is the second video of section 4.6. So here we're going to talk about finding the zeros, and really this is kind of a repeat of what we did yesterday when we factored this completely, because remember we can get factors from zeros and zeros from factors. So this is kind of the same concept, but we already used Descartes' rule of signs to kind of help guide us. Okay, so if we know that there's no negative real solutions, we're not going to check any negative numbers. Okay, so let's go ahead and look and use Descartes' rule of signs to see what we should check for first. Okay, well, f of x, we have start positive, positive, positive to negative. Okay, so we know that we have one positive real solution. Okay, we know that's for sure. Okay, now if I find f of negative x, okay, that would be negative x to the fifth plus 3 times negative x to the fourth plus 9 times negative x cubed plus 23 times negative x squared minus 36, okay, which then is negative x to the fifth plus 3x to the fourth minus 9x cubed plus 23x squared minus 36. Okay, so now I want to look at the sign changes. So negative to a positive, positive to a negative, negative to a positive, positive to a negative. Okay, so this means that I have 4 or less than by an even number, or 2, okay, or maybe I have 2 more imaginaries, or 0 negative real solution. Okay, so this is where you kind of have to make, I don't know, a guess, or maybe it's just how much of a risk taker are you? Okay, so we could either check negative real solutions and think of it as the fact that, well, there may be 4, so we could probably find them easier. Okay, but you also have to go into the fact that, well, there may be no real solutions. Okay, we may be looking for something that doesn't exist. Okay, or we can go for the for sure thing. We know we have one positive real solution, let's find it. Okay, it's up to you. I think in this scenario, I'm going to take my chances and I'm going to start checking for negative real solutions. Okay, so remember the possible solutions or possible zeros is P over Q, or any factors of 36 over factors of 1. Okay, so essentially we want the multiples of 36. So 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 5 doesn't go into it, 6 and 6. Okay, and any of these can be positive or negative. Now, luckily for us, our leading coefficient is 1, so just these over 1. Okay, so if I'm going to start with my negative real solutions, okay, I'm going to start with -1 and just kind of see where it goes. Okay, now remember we do this when synthetic division. Okay, so I need my coefficients of all these. So I have a 1, 3, 9, 23. I need to put 0 in as my placeholder for x and negative 36. Okay, so bring my 1 down. 1 times -1 is -1. 2 times -1 is a -2. 9 plus -2 is 7. 7 times -1, -7. That'd be what? 16. -16, -16, positive 16. I don't even have to think about that because I know it's not 0. Okay, remember it's a factor if my remainder is 0. My remainder is not 0. I'm not going to waste my time trying to find, that would be easy. But otherwise, you know, when it's not easy, I'm not going to waste my time. Okay, so if -1 isn't a 0, okay, I'm just going to try -2. So 1, 3, 9, 23, 0, -36. Okay, so bring my 1 down. 1 times -2 is -2. Add these, get 1. 1 times -2 is -2. 7. Okay, 7 times -2 is -14. What is that? 9. 9 times -2 is a -18. Add those, it's -18. -18 times -2 is a positive 36. When I add them, I get a remainder of 0. Okay, so x minus 2 is a 0, which means x minus 2 is a factor. Okay, now when I factor an x minus 2 out, remember this is the remainder, the constant, the x squared, x cubed, and x to the fourth. Okay, what I'm left with is x to the fourth plus x cubed plus 7x squared plus 9x minus 8. Okay, so now I want to keep going. Okay, now I'm just looking to factor this more. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and check with -2 again, maybe -2 factors again. So, but this time I'm not going to go back to the original equation. I'm going to use this equation right here underlined in red. So 1, 1, 7, 9, -18. All right, so bring my 1 down. 1 times -2 is -2. Add those, I get -1. -2 times -1 is a +2. Add those, I get 9. 9 times -2 is a -18. If I add those, I get -9. -9 times -2 is a +18. We lucked out because I get a remainder of 0. Okay, so I know that -2 is essentially a 0 twice. Okay, oop, this should be a +2, sorry, which means that x plus 2 is a factor. So I have my x plus 2 from before that I carried down. Okay, this means here that x plus 2 is a factor. Okay, and what I get left is remainder constant x squared, x to the third. I have x to the third plus x, nope, minus x squared minus x squared plus 9x, plus 9x, yes, minus 9. Okay, now I'm at a good point here. I want to factor this more, okay? But we can do this without having to do synthetic division and guessing and checking. So x cubed minus x squared plus 9x minus 9. Okay, I'm going to factor this by grouping. Okay, so I'm going to think of these as like two things in parentheses. So I can factor out an x squared here. And when I factor out an x squared, I'm left with an x minus 1. Okay, plus, in this parenthesis, I can factor out a 9, and I'm left with x minus 1. Okay, which is perfect because now I can factor out an x minus 1 from both. Okay, and what I'm left with is an x squared plus 9. Okay, so this in fully factored form is an x plus 2. X plus 2 times x plus 2, I'm just going to put an x plus 2 squared. Okay, and then I have an x minus 1 and an x squared plus 9. Okay, this is f of x. F of x. Okay, now I want you guys to remember that if we were to multiply all this out and put it in standard form, we would get this, okay? Anytime we factor, we get back to where we started, okay? We're not changing the equation, we're just changing the way it looks. Okay, now to get my zeros, guys, okay, I get -2 twice. Okay, I have an x plus 2 and an x plus 2. So I'm going to write it as -2 twice. So zeros, -2, comma, -2, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, x minus 1, that means 1 is a 0. Okay, now x squared plus 9, guys. I want to know, when is x squared plus 9 equal to 0? Okay, well, if I subtract 9 from both sides, I get x squared, -9, square root both sides, plus or minus. So I get x equals plus or minus square root of -9, which is 3i. So 3i and minus 3i. Okay, here are my zeros of the function. Okay, notice there are 5 of them, which matches my degree. Okay, also notice that I have 2 negative. I got my 1 positive, which we knew I'd get my 1 positive, and then I have a pair of imaginaries. All right, so I want you to pause this video, okay, and I want you to do this problem right here on your own and then come back and check it. So go ahead and pause it, try to work this one out on your own, and then we'll go over it.